Welcome back to PLS 510, Forage Management and Utilization. Today we're going to begin what I hope to be is a three-part lecture on annual warm season grasses. To make listening to this lecture or this topic easier, I have broken it down into three smaller sections. Number one, some general comments. Number two, a species by species description. And the last lecture or last recording will be just a word or two about grazing management. So let's get started. The annual warm season grasses that we grow in Kentucky will include the sorghum species, and that would be forage sorghum, the sorghum Sudan hybrids, Sudan grass, and even Johnson grass. We won't spend a lot of time on Johnson grass in this section, but we will take it up later as we talk about pasture management and especially the disorders that come and that are associated with the sorghum species. Similar in growth habit to the sorghum species is pearl millet. Below that is crabgrass, which looks quite a bit different than both the sorghum species or pearl millet, but also the crabgrass that you're used to seeing in a lawn setting. Corn is also a annual warm season grass that we can utilize in forage systems, and it has a very important niche and a special niche. A grass called teff is also possible, as is the foxtail millets. The reasons why we're going to consider or need to talk about annual warm season grasses and why producers would choose to grow them are going to be fairly obvious, and then they can get to be fairly sophisticated. The first, of course, is because they are native, because they are warm season grasses with temperature optimums in that 75 to 90 or 85 to 95 degree range, they are excellent producers during the summer, given fertility and rainfall. They can have extremely high quality when they are grazed, especially corn. They can be used as emergency pasture or hay, and although I am going to put an asterisk by hay because some are definitely better for hay than others. If we get into a situation where you can see that your cool season grasses are not going to produce in the spring, you can expect with a sprayed down field of cool season grasses and a planting of summer annual grasses that you can get a cutting of hay or to begin grazing on that field in 60 days and sometimes less. They are useful as in rotation, either preceding a fall seeding such that you're finished up in the fall before with a crop and you have maybe planted a wheat crop and you're going to graze it or hay it, and then you don't want the summer to go by idle. You can put a annual grass in there for the summer, kill it down, and then plant your desired cool season grass in the fall. Annual warm season grasses also excel as smother crops in pasture conversion, and the most frequent use of these summer annual grasses for pasture conversion comes with the conversion of toxic tall fescue to novel tall fescue. Let's talk about some general characteristics of the warm season grasses, the annual warm season grasses. Now, these won't be true for all, but they are generally larger seeded and deeper planted. That especially applies to the sorghums, the pearl millets, and corn. Their growth is highly dependent on good fertility, especially nitrogen. And typically, we need to apply nitrogen every time we want that crop to regrow, about 60 or 80 pounds at a time. Because of the problems and the potential for nitrate toxicity, if we fertilize with nitrogen and then get into a drought, we oftentimes will, we will need to split apply the nitrogen and put on just what we need to grow the next flush of growth. The summer annual grasses that we use most frequently, the sorghums and the pearl millets, are tall growing species that are hard to cure for hay because of thick waxy stems. And some can cause serious disorders like nitrate toxicity, prussic acid or cyanide toxicity, and in horses, cystitis. We will talk about some of these in a very general way associated with the species where the species that may cause these, but we'll take them up more specifically in a later lecture because it's important to have a very, very good understanding of the toxicities that are rare, but that can happen when we use summer annual grasses. And sorghums are susceptible to damage from sugar cane aphid, which is a new pest to Kentucky coming up from the south and from the west. Moving on, these annual forages should be considered to be high-cost forages because they are, you must buy the seed. It's only good for 1 year. The fertilizer that you're going to apply, especially nitrogen, is going to be higher in that year oftentimes than what you would apply to a cool season perennial species. Another characteristic that's true of these grasses, the economic return is going to be better when utilized by growing cattle that will be sold. The reason for that is that all of the forage that is consumed is going to go into an animal to produce growth that is harvested and sold, as opposed to a cow-calf operation where the calf is the unit that is sold, but you also have to use some of the forage then to maintain the cow. Now, that's not to say you can't and shouldn't use summer annual grasses for cow-calf production, for summer pasture, to rest your tall fescue, and for many, many other reasons. But when you're talking purely economic return, when you are grazing them with growing species, growing cattle or growing heifers, then the economic returns are better. And we use them most frequently or very frequently as a transition crop, or I should say the use of them as a transition crop is also an economic benefit because you're able to both smother the plants that you don't want, for example, toxic tall fescue, suppress the weeds that you don't want in anticipation of establishing that high quality perennial grass like novel tall fescue after the summer annual grass is done. So this concludes our brief introduction to the summer annual grasses. In our next segment, we will talk about each of these individually. We will see you then.